So the first argument is just going to be the argument from marginal cases. In order to conclude that all and only human beings deserve a full and equal moral status, there must be some property P that all and only human beings have that can ground such a claim. Any P that only human beings have is a property that some human beings lack, the marginal cases. Any P that all human beings have is a property that most animals have as well. Therefore, there is no way to defend the claim that all and only human beings deserve a full and equal moral status.
That's self-evidently false. There are certain P properties which all and only human beings have. For one example, being a human. Human beings cannot lack that property, but all non-human beings lack that property.
The other one is going to be the deontological argument. If only humans have rights, then there is no violation of rights when an animal gets fucked by its owner. If animals don't have rights, then no action to them is a rights violation. If your view holds that animals don't have rights and you can only harm animals to feed other animals, then if I put a grenade in the mouth of a dog in order to feed ants in my yard, that wouldn't be a rights violation.
This one is weird. He seems to argue that if animals don't have rights, then there wouldn't be right violations of animals. Or in other words, animals wouldn't have rights. Okay.
And then the last one we just have is the Euthyphro dilemma. Does God command for a reason or for no reason? If he commands for a reason, then God is not the standard of morality. If God doesn't, then his commands are purely arbitrary, and those are just undermined.
Any theist would say that it's a false dilemma and that there is a third option where God is the standard of morality and it isn't arbitrary.
If your view affirms animals are worthy of moral consideration, just not sufficient to deem them wrong to kill for consumption, but it is for humans, then your view entails there's a relevant symmetry breaker between humans and animals that justifies killing one and not the other. We can drop P and Q from there. It's going to be basic NTT. I don't think I need to explain too much about NTT. Everybody here should, at least for the most part, know NTT.
Name the trait isn't argument for veganism. It doesn't logically lead to conclusion of veganism. Even if we assume that their debate opponents are inconsistent, it doesn't necessarily mean that they have to go vegan just because they are inconsistent. Inconsistency of others doesn't make vegans to be consistent, nor it makes veganism to be coherent. So that was a waste of time.
Last, I'll go over the veil of ignorance. This is probably a thought experiment that was given by John Rawls. Imagine you're setting up a moral system, but you don't know where in society you will end up. You don't know what race, gender, sex, religious belief you'll have, what abilities, intelligence, or even the species you'll be born as. You, as a decision maker, are assumed to be purely self-interest, but your decisions are constrained by the absence of information that they could use to select principles favorable to their personal circumstances. Now, Rawls refers to this as the veil of ignorance. Now, what kind of moral system would you design behind the veil? Would you make protections for race, sex, religion, and religious beliefs? Presumably, yes. But would you make protections for non-human animals? That's really the question. If you would make protections, then what would those protections be, right? And if you wouldn't make protections, then those non-protections would actually make it almost deemable to do whatever we want with these animals.
I already have a video about veil of ignorance, which you can watch here. Long story short, it doesn't make any sense, and even if we assume that it does, it comes back to bite vegans in the ass.
And lastly, I'll be using the type of Pascalian wager for veganism, right? This is primarily directed towards the agnostics. If veganism and non-veganism have a similar probability, then we have more of a pragmatic reason to be vegan, given that the consequences of being carnivore would be worse if veganism were true compared to the consequences of being vegan if carnism were true.
For the sake of the argument, let's grant the whole similar probability thing. He didn't specify, so I presume he was talking about environmental consequences. If so, then that's nonsense, because veganism doesn't necessitate being environmentally friendly, just like non-veganism doesn't necessitate being environmentally unfriendly. I would say they did a pretty bad job with their arguments. Some are false, some are laughable, and some are not even arguments for veganism.